I thought I had it all figured out. At 32, I was living what everyone called the American dream. My husband Marcus and I had been married for 8 years, and from the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. We had a beautiful house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the driveway, and a joint bank account that showed we were doing well financially. Marcus worked as a regional sales manager for a tech company, and I had built my own successful marketing consultancy from the ground up. But you know what they say about appearances, they can be deceiving. While I was working 16-hour days building my business, pouring my heart and soul into every client project, Marcus was building something else entirely. Something that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. The first red flag should have been the late nights. Marcus started coming home later and later, always with the same excuse. Big client meeting ran over, or team dinner for the new product launch. I was so focused on my own work that I barely questioned it. In fact, I was almost grateful. It meant I could work without feeling guilty about not spending enough time with him. Then came the phone calls. Hushed conversations that would end abruptly when I walked into the room. The way he'd clutch his phone like it was made of gold, never leaving it face up on the counter like he used to. When I asked about it, he'd laugh it off. Just work stuff, babe. You know how crazy things have been. And I believed him. God, I was so naive. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I had finished a particularly challenging project early, and decided to surprise Marcus with his favorite dinner. I spent 2 hours cooking, set the table with our good china, and even opened a bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. But Marcus didn't come home. Not at 7, not at 8, not even at 9. When he finally walked through the door at 11:30, his shirt was wrinkled, his hair was disheveled, and he smelled like perfume that definitely wasn't mine. The look on his face when he saw the cold dinner on the table was something I'll never forget. It wasn't guilt or shame, it was annoyance. He was annoyed that I had disrupted whatever he had going on. That night, as he made up another elaborate excuse about a client emergency, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out what was really happening. I wasn't going to be the naive wife anymore. I was going to be the investigator, the strategist, the woman who had built a successful business from nothing. And I was going to use every skill I had learned to uncover the truth. Little did I know that the truth would be worse than anything I could have imagined. And that my response would be something Marcus never saw coming. The next morning, I started my investigation with the methodical approach I used for my most complex marketing campaigns. I created a spreadsheet, tracking Marcus's patterns, his excuses, his behavior changes. I noted everything from the time he left for work to the time he came home, the frequency of his work emergencies, and the changes in his spending habits. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, there had been mysterious charges on our joint credit card. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. Hotel rooms booked during times when he claimed to be in all-day meetings. Jewelry purchases that I had never received. The evidence was building, but I needed more than just financial records. I decided to follow him. I know it sounds crazy, but I had to know for sure. I borrowed my friend Sarah's car and waited outside his office building one Thursday evening. When Marcus left at 5:30, instead of heading home, he drove to the other side of town. My heart pounded as I followed him, keeping a safe distance, until he pulled into the parking lot of an upscale apartment complex. He walked to Building C, used a key to let himself in, and disappeared inside. I sat in that parking lot for 3 hours, watching, waiting, confirming what I already knew but desperately hoped wasn't true. When he finally emerged, he wasn't alone. She was tall, blonde, probably in her mid-20s, and she was beautiful in that effortless way that made my stomach twist with jealousy and rage. They kissed goodbye like lovers do, not like colleagues or friends. Long, passionate, intimate. The kind of kiss that spoke of familiarity, of stolen moments, of a relationship that had been going on for months. Maybe longer. I watched them, and I felt something inside me break and reshape itself into something harder, colder, more determined. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I went home, made dinner, and pretended everything was normal when he walked through the door an hour later with his usual excuse about traffic. I smiled, I laughed at his jokes, I acted like the loving wife I had been for 8 years. But inside I was planning. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered more evidence. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Janet who specialized in infidelity cases. She confirmed what I already knew and provided me with photographs, timestamps, and detailed reports of Marcus's activities. He was spending at least 4 nights a week at her apartment. Her name was Jessica, she was 26, and she worked as a receptionist at a dental office. But here's what Janet discovered that shocked me most. Marcus had been planning to leave me. He had opened a separate bank account 3 months ago, and had been slowly transferring money from our joint accounts. He had consulted with a divorce attorney and had been preparing to file papers. The plan, according to the documents Janet managed to obtain, was to clean out our accounts, claim that my business was failing, and leave me with as little as possible. He thought he was being clever. He thought I was too busy with work to notice. He thought I was too trusting, too naive, too dependent on him to fight back. He was wrong on all counts. Marcus had no idea who he was dealing with, and he was about to find out that underestimating me was the biggest mistake of his life. Knowledge is power, and I had knowledge in spades. But I also had something Marcus didn't expect, a mind trained in strategic thinking and a business background that had taught me how to plan several moves ahead. If he wanted to play games, I was going to play to win. My first move was to secure my own finances. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, and began transferring money from our joint accounts in small amounts that wouldn't trigger any alerts. I documented every transaction, every transfer Marcus had made to his secret account. I also started moving my business assets to a separate entity, protecting everything I had built from the ground up. But I didn't stop there. I began investigating Jessica, too. Social media made it easy to learn about her life, her habits, her dreams. She posted constantly about her relationship with a mystery man who was going to change her life. She had no idea he was married, no idea that she was just another victim in Marcus's web of lies. Through careful observation and some creative detective work, I discovered that Jessica thought Marcus was divorced. He had told her that he was in the middle of a messy separation and that his ex-wife was being difficult about the settlement. She genuinely believed she was dating a single man who was just dealing with post-divorce complications. This gave me an idea. Instead of exposing Marcus immediately, I decided to use Jessica as an unwitting ally. I created a fake social media profile and began engaging with her posts, eventually striking up conversations. I portrayed myself as someone who had been through a similar situation with a cheating ex. Slowly, I began planting seeds of doubt about her relationship. I asked innocent questions that made her think. Has he introduced you to his friends yet? Have you been to his place? It's weird that he's always at your apartment, don't you think? I never directly accused Marcus of anything, but I made Jessica start questioning things she had previously accepted without thought. Meanwhile, I was building my case for what was to come. I documented everything, every lie, every financial manipulation, every night he spent away from home. I gathered evidence of his attempts to hide assets and his plans to file for divorce on terms that would benefit only him. But the most important thing I did was secure my business. I had built my marketing consultancy from nothing, and it was worth considerably more than Marcus realized. I had been deliberately downplaying its success, partly out of modesty and partly because I knew Marcus had a tendency to become resentful when I achieved something he couldn't. I worked with my accountant and lawyer to restructure the business, ensuring that it would be protected regardless of what happened with the marriage. I also began documenting the hours I worked, the clients I served, and the revenue I generated. If Marcus wanted to claim that my business was failing, I would have irrefutable proof that it was thriving. The final piece of my strategy was the most delicate. I needed to catch Marcus in the act of lying, not just about the affair, but about his financial manipulations. I needed him to commit to his story, to dig himself so deep into his web of deception that he couldn't climb out. So I started asking questions. Casual, innocent questions about our finances, our future, our plans. I mentioned that I had noticed some unusual activity in our accounts, and asked if he knew anything about it. His explanations were elaborate and creative, but they were also recorded. Every lie, every excuse, every attempt to gaslight me was documented. Marcus thought he was playing chess while I was playing checkers. He had no idea that I was actually playing three-dimensional chess, thinking 5 moves ahead, anticipating his every strategy. He was about to learn that the quiet, trusting wife he thought he knew was actually a formidable opponent. 3 months into my investigation, I was ready to make my move. I had evidence, I had a strategy, and I had something Marcus would never expect: the element of surprise. He still had no idea that I knew about Jessica, about his secret bank account, or about his plans to leave me with nothing. The opportunity came when Marcus announced he was going on a business trip to Chicago for a long weekend. I knew from my surveillance that he was actually planning to spend the weekend with Jessica at a resort upstate. They had been planning this romantic getaway for weeks, and Marcus had been particularly attentive to me in the days leading up to it, probably trying to assuage his guilt. On the Friday he left, I put my plan into action. First, I went to our bank and withdrew a significant amount of cash from our joint accounts, money that was rightfully mine, given that I had contributed more to our joint finances than Marcus had. I then transferred the remainder to an account he didn't know about, leaving just enough to cover the automatic bills. Next, I went to Jessica's apartment. I had been planning this conversation for weeks, and I knew exactly what I was going to say. When she opened the door, I could see the confusion in her eyes. She had no idea who I was, but something in my expression must have told her this wasn't a social call. "Hi, Jessica," I said calmly. "I'm Marcus's wife. I think we need to talk." The color drained from her face. She invited me in, and for the next hour, I laid out everything I knew. I showed her the photographs, the financial records, the evidence of Marcus's lies. I watched as her world crumbled around her, just as mine had when I first discovered the truth. But here's the thing: I didn't blame Jessica. She was as much a victim as I was. Marcus had lied to her, manipulated her, made her believe she was building a future with an available man. When she realized the extent of his deception, she was devastated. "I had no idea," she kept repeating. "He told me he was divorced. He said you were his ex-wife and that you were being vindictive about the settlement. I would never have gotten involved if I had known he was still married." I believed her. And more importantly, I saw an opportunity. Jessica was hurt, angry, and ready to help me expose Marcus for who he really was. Together, we hatched a plan that would give Marcus exactly what he deserved. On Sunday evening, when Marcus returned from his business trip, I was waiting for him in our living room. The house was dark except for a single lamp, and I was sitting in his favorite chair, holding a thick folder of documents. "How was Chicago?" I asked sweetly as he walked through the door. "Oh, same old boring conference stuff," he replied, not even looking at me as he set down his suitcase. "Lots of meetings, not much excitement." "That's funny," I said, standing up, because Jessica was just telling me about what an amazing weekend you two had at the mountain resort. The look on his face was priceless. Pure shock, followed by panic, followed by a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. He tried to deny it, tried to explain, tried to turn the situation around on me. But I had evidence, and I had witnesses, and I had been planning this moment for months. "Sit down, Marcus," I said firmly. "We need to talk about your secret bank account, your plans to file for divorce, and your attempts to leave me with nothing. But first, we need to talk about how you're going to leave this marriage with nothing instead." Marcus tried every trick in the book. He denied, he minimized, he blamed me for working too much and not paying enough attention to him. He even tried to claim that Jessica was lying, that she was a crazy woman who was stalking him. But I had documentation for everything, and his lies only made him look more pathetic. "You want to know the funny thing about all this?" I said, spreading the documents across our coffee table. "I actually might have been willing to work things out if you had just been honest with me. If you had come to me and said you were unhappy, that you wanted something different, we could have talked about it. We could have gone to counseling. We could have figured out a way to end things amicably." Marcus's face went pale as he realized the depth of my investigation. Bank records, photographs, witness statements, recordings of his lies. I had built a case that would have impressed any prosecutor. But instead, I continued, you chose to lie, to cheat, to steal from our joint accounts, and to plan a divorce that would leave me with nothing while you ran off with your girlfriend. You underestimated me, Marcus. You thought I was too busy, too trusting, too naive to notice. You were wrong. I handed him a document that made his hands shake. It was a comprehensive financial statement showing exactly how much money he had stolen from our accounts and transferred to his secret account. But more importantly, it showed how much money I had legally moved to protect my interests. You see, while you were playing house with Jessica, I was playing a much more sophisticated game. I secured my business assets, I documented your financial manipulation, and I gathered evidence of your adultery. In this state, adultery affects the division of assets, especially when one spouse has been actively hiding money and planning to defraud the other. Marcus tried to interrupt, tried to negotiate, but I wasn't finished. I've already filed for divorce, Marcus. My lawyer has all the evidence. You're going to be paying me alimony, not the other way around. My business, which you tried to claim was failing, is actually worth 3 times what you think it is. And that house you thought you were going to keep? It's going to be sold, and I'm going to get the majority of the proceeds. But the best part was yet to come. I pulled out my phone and showed him a video that made his face go white. It was Jessica, recording a statement about how Marcus had lied to her, how he had claimed to be divorced, how he had manipulated her into believing she was dating a single man. Jessica is going to testify about your character, I said. She's going to tell the court about your lies, your manipulation, your complete disregard for the truth. She's as angry as I am, Marcus. You didn't just lose a wife, you lost a girlfriend too. The final blow came when I handed him the keys to his car. Oh, and Marcus? That car you've been driving? It's registered in my name. I bought it with money from my business. You're going to need to find another way to get around. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Marcus got exactly what he deserved, almost nothing. He had to pay me alimony, I kept the house, and I got the majority of our shared assets. His attempt to hide money and plan a fraudulent divorce had backfired spectacularly. My business thrived without the stress of a failing marriage. I threw myself into my work with renewed energy and purpose. I expanded my client base, hired additional staff, and achieved levels of success I had never imagined possible. As for Marcus, he lost his job shortly after our divorce became public. Apparently, his employer wasn't impressed with his moral character or his judgment. He moved into a small apartment and took a job that paid half of what he had been making. Jessica, of course, wanted nothing to do with him after learning the truth. The last I heard, Marcus was dating someone new. Another woman he had met online. Another woman who probably had no idea what kind of man she was dealing with. But that's not my problem anymore. I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting angry, it's getting even. And sometimes the quiet, trusting wife knows exactly how to play the game when she decides to start playing. I built a life that was better than anything I had when I was married to Marcus. I built it on my own terms, with my own money, and with the knowledge that I had stood up for myself when it mattered most. He tried to leave me with nothing, but in the end, I left him with nothing instead. And that, I think, is exactly what he deserved. To support the channel, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.